We have a full agenda per usual, so I'm going to practice keeping us moving and on task. So presenters, please do not take it personally if I notify you that we're falling behind, but I'll ask that we keep to the times on our schedule. That includes me. We will come to order at 3:02. And the first item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Next item, approval of the August 29, 2023 meeting minutes. Any corrections, changes, additions? Hearing none, minutes are approved. So the next item on our agenda is the posthumous degree request for Herbert von Haas. And we have the ever energetic, smart, brilliant Lisa Lindquist to present on this action item. Lisa, are you here?
I am, and with that welcome, I will attend every meeting from here on out.
Great.
Thank you all. So nice to see you. So nice to see you all. Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Lindquist. I am at the Global Respect Advocacy Center. And I come before you today to seek your approval for a posthumous degree for Herbert von Haas. He's actually a student. If you read through the information that we provided, he was a longtime student, and he was very close to receiving his degree. I just want to point out that it sounds his wife, Marie von Haas, is a current student and a PhD candidate with the university. They were both extremely involved. And just had a lifelong love for learning and for the university. And so with that, I'll stand for any specific questions that you might have.
Colleagues, please use if you click on reactions at the bottom of your screen, and then you can raise your hand. I think that'll be the easiest way for me to monitor who might have questions.
Okay.
Okay, Rick, do we have a poll?
Yes, you need a motion and a second first.
Thank you, sir. See, isn't Rick great? He keeps me on task. I
move we put this to a vote.
Colleagues, do I have a motion to put this to a vote? Thank you, Ezra.
I move.
Seconded.
Okay, Sever moved and John Burke seconded. Any discussion? Okay, Rick, can you bring up the poll for us? It looks like everyone who is voting has entered their response. Congratulations, Lisa. This posthumous degree request has been approved.
Thank you all.
Please congratulate your family for us.
I will. And just so you all know, this will move through the next phase, which is going to say it wrong, STAR. And then we move on to the Board of Regents. So I appreciate your help with getting this through. You all have a wonderful rest of your day and a great rest of your semester.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for your work. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Next, we have on our agenda, no less energetic, President Garnet Stokes.
Thank you. With that, I will come to every meeting too. So it's good to see all of you. I'm sorry I had to miss the first meeting of the semester, but glad to be here today. I just have a few items I was going to mention to you, and we'll definitely keep within the time. I know what a busy calendar you have in Senate. And I actually run the risk of stealing the provost's thunder. I'm going to try to be careful, but maybe not as careful as I should be. James, you'll have to tell me later. Total enrollment is, I think, officially up at UNM for the second year in a row. And not only that, we had a 3.1% increase in our first year student registrations. The first year class of 2027 are our largest class in Lobo history, which is a remarkable thing to say. It's also 4 years in a row that we've had significant increases in our first year students. So this is all very positive news for UNM. I think since I was with you, Jennifer Millett has started as our new dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, and I've had the pleasure of actually seeing her at a number of events. And Perumal, who teaches in the College of Pharmacy, is our new associate VP in OVPR in the vice president's office. So really glad. And next time I'll also mention a new hire that we just announced in to run finance over in health sciences. Definitely grateful for the leadership that we have right now with some interim deans, including Leslie Donovan for the Honors College, David Weiss for University College, and the graduate school with Maria Lane. So there was I don't know how many of you get an opportunity to read the New York Times, but I was noticing an article recently in which they were looking at economic diversity in higher education, and they looked at the top almost 300 schools, the 300 most selective higher education institutions in the country in terms of economic diversity, and UNM ended up tied for number 9. And we were really the only, I think, 3 public institutions that were in the top 10, and certainly the only flagship institution there. The way they looked at this was really, what proportion of our students are receiving Pell Grants, but they were making the case to think a little differently about the way we rank universities. And I thought this was a really important way to think about what UNM, one of the ways in which we really do a great job for our students. We have elevated 6 more faculty this year to distinguished professor. And it's always great. Several were able to attend a reception that was at University House that was co-hosted with the provost, with James, and with Doug Ziodonis in health sciences. It's remarkable to meet these folks, to see our faculty who are promoted, including to distinguished professor. I know some of you have probably been to this event. I did want to remind you that something new that was started by our Dean of Libraries and the Provost's office was that when faculty for any rank are promoted, they have the opportunity to select a book of their choice, which will be permanently placed within the library. And, one of the fun things, and maybe one of the challenging things, is figuring out what book one wants to put into the library. But it was a bit of a topic of conversation at the reception for our newly promoted faculty. So that's one of the really great events that we have every year at University House. Also, since I was last with you, you remember our grand challenges, and that our initial 3 grand challenges that we launched in 2019 were sustainable water, substance use disorders, and successful aging. Well, we now have 3 more level 2 grand challenges, one focused on child health related to child maltreatment, another entitled Just Transition to Green Energy, and the third focused on sustainable space research. Now, if you haven't had a chance to hear, more about these grand challenges, there's still a number of other projects that will continue to get support from the Vice President for Research's office, and it's really exciting to see the ways in which these interdisciplinary teams are taking off and doing some incredible scholarship and solving some of society's big problems. You may not have seen it, but we also launched a new bi-weekly podcast. So now UNM is in the business of promoting these podcasts. We call the series, It's Probably Not Rocket Science, and it's intended to spotlight UNM's research. The first episode featured Dean Leo Lowe from the College of Libraries and Learning Sciences, and also law professor Sonia Gibson Rankin, and they were discussing the impact of artificial intelligence on higher education, government, and law. And you can subscribe to this series on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I would say the first one is about 45 minutes long. So people that I've talked to who listen to it were, on a walk or doing something else when they listen. But I'm really pleased to see UNM starting to showcase our work in this way. Something I wanted to be sure you were aware of, we've been working for months on an integrated campus plan. And now there is an opportunity coming up, and if you read my President's Weekly Perspective, you'll have seen it mentioned. But this is really part of thinking about creating a plan for the future of the institution and all of the land that the University of New Mexico has. So it includes everything down at Mesa del Sol. It includes land throughout the state. It really is thinking and creating a process by which we decide, what future facilities we need and where those are going to go. And it's that part of the process in which there's an opportunity for people to go and look at what we're doing and weigh in on it. So from September 26th to the 28th, there are some pop-up engagement stations that people can go to and actually give feedback about this plan. If you look in my message, you'll see where you can click on the pop-up, but there are things at Smith Plaza, things at the Draft and Table, at Mitchell Hall, again at Smith Plaza, over at Happy Heart Bistro and Cornell Mall, and then in front of La Posada Dining Hall. So really just places on campus. And I hope you'll have an opportunity to go look at the work that's been done. There's been a lot of input from different parts of campus, but this is a very important project for us. It's been going on, like I said, for months, but really I think it's been going on for about a year. So a lot has gone into this to date. In terms of what I'm up to, we're working with members of the legislature, making plans for a 30-day session. It's ongoing year-round work, but there's so much one-time money available at the state level that we want to be sure and maximize what UNM is able to do. I am continuing to host traveling office hours. I was at nursing today, and we had a great conversation. I was at biology a couple of weeks ago, and heard quite a lot about some concerns that people have. And I look forward to the next one, which is going to be next week with academic communities at the University Advisement and Enrichment Center. The University of New Mexico's foundation held a retreat last week where this is the arm of the institution, affiliation of the institution that focuses on raising private support for the university. We've had a couple of record-breaking years in raising funds. It doesn't compare to what the state provides to us, but it is really working to build support, private support, financial support for the institution over the long run. And so this is a group of leaders who are figuring out how to raise money that is supportive of the institution's 2040 plan. And so that was really a lot of the topic of the retreat. What I've been pleased about over the last 4 or 5 years is the extent to which we have a board that is really focused on the needs of the university and what our aspirations are. So, you know, I could say a whole lot more, but I realize that I might be passing my time, and I want to be sure to give the other leaders and of course all of you the chance to get through your business. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, President Stokes. We have a couple minutes for questions. Please use the hand raising emoji, if you will. Any questions for President Stokes?
And of course, I didn't say a word about Mountain West Conference, which I'm continuing to chair. So okay.
Thank you, President Stokes. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda item is Provost Holloway's report. Take it away, please, Provost.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for being here. Rick, I'm going to share screen in a minute, so if you could give me permission to do that, that'd be great. I wanted to follow up on one thing that President Stokes was talking about that we're both proud of, and I think upon the inspection leads to some challenges for us. And so the New York Times, of course, reported on the really the impressive number of students we have at UNM who are on Pell support. Pell pays students about $7,000 a year, and so it's a worthwhile scholarship for our undergraduate students who are whose families have low income. But one of the data that I want to share that's I think really important for our Pell students. We're very proud in New Mexico to have the Opportunity Scholarship, to have the Lottery Scholarship. These are great tools for supporting our New Mexico resident undergraduate students. One of the challenges we have, though, is students losing eligibility for those scholarships. And to give you a sense of that, and one of the most important pieces of it, I think, when a student starts in the fall term, they're not eligible for the Lottery Scholarship. We give them what we call a bridge scholarship. This is using institutional funds. That's not enough to cover tuition, but we can top it up with Opportunity Scholarship dollars so that qualified New Mexico residents in their first term can have their tuition fully covered. And then if they are a Pell student, what their Pell dollars pay for is housing, food, books, all of those other costs of attendance. Now, here's the problem we have as an institution. Come spring term, only 66% of our students are eligible for lottery and Opportunity Scholarships. So kind of just in that first term, going from the first term to the second term, 33%, a third of our students lose eligibility for those Opportunity and Lottery Scholarships. If they are on Pell, they still have Pell, but that's not enough even to pay their tuition. And so a third of our students moving from first term to second term may immediately face financial hardships. And so one of the things that we're going to start doing a lot more work on is helping students work to retain their eligibility for those scholarships. There's a lot of pieces to that, and over the next few weeks, we'll be kind of rolling out a whole set of programs and ideas around that. But one that I really want to emphasize for faculty is it's really helpful for students and helpful for them to know where they are, to have grade data as they go through the term. And so one of the things we want to do is really encourage our colleagues to keep great information up to date in Canvas so that students know where they are, can work with their advisors, can work with their faculty and make good choices about what it is they need to do during their first term to remain successful. The number one reason students lose eligibility for the Opportunity and Lottery Scholarship is completing less than 15 credits in a term. And so if a student signs up for 15 or 16 credits and drops a 3-credit-hour class in fall term, they won't be eligible for lottery the next term. And so we really need to look carefully at when a student is thinking about dropping, why they're thinking about dropping, what we can do if they really do need to drop. But an important piece of that is for students to really have current up-to-date information on where they stand in classes. So we'll be sending out some communications around that, but I wanted to mention it to all of you because it is a place where we as faculty can really try and help our students make sure they retain that eligibility. It's no surprise when a third of our students with Pell in the winter term are not eligible for Opportunity and Lottery. They don't have enough funds even to pay their tuition. It's not a surprise that they then start to have issues around basic needs and food security and housing security. So just kind of wanted to tee that up with folks and know that we are rolling out a strategic plan around student success. But key parts of that will involve faculty engagement. So let me switch gears a little bit. One thing rolling down the pipe at us, October 1st is coming. October 1st is the first day of the fiscal year for the federal government, and good chance there's not going to be a fiscal year for the federal government. And so looking very likely that there'll be a government shutdown effective Monday. That does have an impact on University of New Mexico. We do something on the order of $360 million a year in research expenditures. The majority of that is from federal sources. Different parts of the federal government will have different guidelines and different abilities to do things relative to those funds while they are, if the government goes into a shutdown. And so it's just something at this moment for folks to be aware of. Our guidance right now is, unless you're told otherwise by your funding agency or the VP for research, folks on research grants should keep expending their research grants. Basically, when we do that, most of our grants, we spend money and the government pays us back. They usually pay us back pretty quickly. If they're shut down, some agencies will pay us back while they're shut down, some will not. Some will pay us back if the shutdown is short and won't pay us back if the shutdown is long. So basically what we're doing is we're gonna float the federal government during a shutdown to the extent that we can. Folks sometimes ask us, what do we have reserve funds for? This is what we have reserve funds for. And so the fact is we can't afford $360 million over 12 months. We're spending on the order of $30 million a month in research. We can afford to support some of that for a while. And so research can continue, folks can continue to be employed as researchers, as graduate assistants, as research faculty, and so on. And we're going to just be closely monitoring what's our own financial position during a shutdown. And we really hope that it's short. The most important thing is, at least for the moment, we should continue our expenditures as currently planned. And we will keep an eye on what the cash flow looks like. Okay, I met with the operations committee last week, and one of the things they would like for you guys to hear about is just something about the university financial position. I'm not going to talk about the whole university. The university as a whole is budget for fiscal 24 of $4.07 billion. $2.9 billion of that is the hospital and the health sciences academic units. What we classically call main campus is about $930 million. The branch campuses are just shy of $60 million. So it gives you a sense of the scope of it. But what I do want to talk a little bit about are the funding that we've been putting into the units under academic affairs. And so for that, I'm going to share screen. If we're really lucky, all this works. It usually works. Start broadcast. Yay. Okay. So I just have a few slides I want to show folks to kind of show where we are in terms of the academic affairs units. And I'm only really going to talk about what we call ING funded instruction and instruction in general. Let's see if I can get this to go to the next slide. Oops. Wait, I may be competent, but we haven't yet demonstrated that fact. Oh, is he fun? Okay, well, that's working. Okay, so just to give a sense of scope, what I'm showing here are the academic units within academic affairs and their ING revenues. And ING includes a base allocation, includes differential tuition, tuition share, for example, if the unit has accelerated online programs or professional master's degrees in certain cases, course fees, things like that. So you just can get a sense of the size of the various units as far as their ING revenues. And again, this is not the total revenues for a unit. Units also, the other significant sources of revenue for units are the research expenditures, research dollars they have, and the philanthropic sources of funds that they have. And so those are not small, but here we're just focusing on the ING pieces. And so you can see we range from $100 million in the College of Arts and Sciences to about 2.4 million in the Honors College. And so there's the Honors College there, there's Arts and Sciences. We have schools like Anderson kind of in the middle, 21 million, Fine Arts, not quite 20 million, and so on. And so just so you get a sense of the scope of those. We look over time, what we're showing here are the investments and permanent reductions. Everything I'm showing you are the recurring funds, not one-time funds. So investments and reductions that have come out of academic affairs over the last 10 years. And on the average, we've put about $3 million into academic units per year, but we've reduced by about 3.9 million per academic year. And what you get is a sense of the time series of that going back to fiscal 15. But the really noticeable thing is here in fiscal 21, this is what happened in summer of 2020 when the state did their emergency budget reductions statewide. And that was a reduction in the academic units here of about $20 million. What we're really trying to achieve is what we have in the last 3 years, and that's continuous growth. So every year we're putting in new recurring dollars into the academic units. 4 million in fiscal 22, 9 million in fiscal 23, 7.6 in fiscal 24 this year. What we like here is the no reductions part, that we're not reducing anything, we're just making strategic investments. And that's what we've been able to do over the last few years. Within those investments, I want to call out funds that are put in specifically for faculty retention, equity, and recruiting. And so we've tried for the last several years to set aside funds specifically for equity, for retention, for recruiting. So we set aside funds for startup, we set aside funds to use to retain faculty. We set aside funds to adjust, to do equity adjustments within individual units. And so we've been making progress on that. 1.3 million last year, 1.9 million this year. And again, this is a combination of funds. Some of it's equity funds, some of it's recruiting, and so on. This year, we were fortunate to have a special allocation from the state to help us with these items. But again, our goal is to keep increasing this amount over time so that we can really address some of the salary challenges that we have at UNM. A different view of this year, what we have is about $3.7 million in faculty lines. So, you know, we've added faculty in education and human sciences, for example. And so those are new faculty lines that are funded there. About 1.9 million in that equity retention recruiting funds. And then this is actually about $700,000 that is promotions. We look just at the state funds that were provided for equity, for merit equity, et cetera. What we did with those funds was focus on a few colleges. And so we didn't, rather than peanut butter them over the entire institution, we looked at a few factors. Which schools and colleges have the lowest pay for faculty? Which schools and colleges have pay that is the most below the average you would expect at an R1 institution for schools and colleges of that sort? So for example, the College of Fine Arts, very low pay per faculty in a kind of a relative sense, but also a really big gap compared to competitor fine arts colleges at R1 institutions. So we've purposefully put some extra funds there. Same with education and human sciences, same criteria, relatively low compared to education schools at other R1s, and a relatively low pay per faculty member. We also put funds into arts and sciences. This is actually part of the 3-year plan we've had to remove to eliminate the deficit in arts and sciences. Part of that plan is that even though we're reducing the number of faculty lines in arts and sciences, we're going to invest in faculty salaries, faculty equity issues, so that we can kind of balance out that loss of faculty with still getting faculty in arts and sciences increased salaries. That deficit in arts and sciences is projected to be eliminated this fiscal year. And so we can hopefully going forward see a different approach to budgeting and faculty hiring in arts and sciences. I will just mention really quickly, if we look, for example, at how were these funds, if we say look at College of Education Human Sciences, $476,000. Part of that went to faculty getting promotions. The bulk of it went to faculty based on equity considerations. We asked each unit to decide internally how to do that. That's not something centrally we can best decide how to do. What Education and Human Sciences did, for example, is look at faculty who are below the average for an R1 faculty member in their precise discipline, measured in defined in a technical way that I won't bother with, but basically who's below average in their particular discipline. And then there were sufficient funds to move those folks to cover 26% of that gap. And so that's, for example, how Education and Human Sciences did it. Fine Arts did something similar. So that's kind of my brief update on what's been going on with kind of some budgeting at the university and where new funds have been going, at least in the academic affairs units. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you, Provost Holloway. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, and I want to make sure that we get to the question that a lot of us have that Natalie put in the chat. Provost Holloway, has there been any discussion about reducing the number of required credits that students have to take at one time? Because I imagine, you know, as a Pell Grant student myself, back as an undergrad, you know, that meant I was working at the same time. It also means a lot of students are taking care of family members, you know, and have have jobs, etc. And so I think the 15 credit requirement can be, right, part of that extra burden. Has there been any conversation around that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. That conversation actually started a couple of years ago relative to the lottery scholarship requirements, which are very similar to the opportunity scholarship requirements. Because we were bringing to the state very similar data showing that students were losing the opportunity scholarship, and that the number one reason for losing it was falling below the 15 credit hours. I think that had some impact on the rules that were put in place for opportunity, which are slightly more flexible, but still fundamentally based on the assumption that a student will graduate in 4 years and take 15 credit hours a term. So I think we made a really incremental progress, but I don't think that we solved the problem. So yeah, those conversations have been going on. I think you're dead on. The fundamental flawed assumption behind both lottery and opportunity in this regard is the assumption that students will complete in 4 years. And we know most of our students can't complete in 4 years. And in fact, if you look at students when they graduate, only half are eligible for lottery or opportunity. A lot of those students, that's because if they're graduating, they're in their 6th year. So they just didn't make it. I'm actually surprised it's as high as 5. So yeah, those conversations are going on, but I don't think that we have cracked that nut. It's both a legislative change and a rulemaking change on the part of HED. And I think any opportunity any of us has to keep this issue on the front burner with HED and with our elected officials is really important. So again, kind of long answer, but yes, we've had those conversations, but we know we haven't solved this and need to keep pushing. And you probably won't be surprised, there is pushback. There is this sort of, most people have ingrained in their heads the notion that college is a 4-year deal. And so there's always some pushback that, oh, we don't want to support students longer, we don't want to support students who aren't making progress, and so on. But that just ignores the reality of many of our realities of many of our students. So thanks for flagging that, because I think it's really important. And I agree with Zoom user who says 15 is too much.
Natalie and I are, I don't know, on the same wavelength or something, but because I wanted to ask a related question, which Natalie has included in the chat, and that is, what can we, Faculty Senate, be doing in order to be part of that conversation and possibly persuade legislators and anyone else involved in making those decisions?
So I'm gonna let the president weigh in on the specific question about a resolution. I have an answer, but I'm gonna let her weigh in first.
Okay, I also should just say,
Don't do that.
we are over time, but Dr. Z was our next, Dr. Doug Zadonis was our next speaker, so I'm letting it go over. But also too, because of that, I wanted to also make sure we return to President Stokes. Since President Stokes was so good about staying within her time limit, a wonderful model for us all. So I'm sorry, President Stokes, go ahead.
Well, all I wanted to say is, James does seem to have an answer for this. I would like to take, I'd like to take a little time to think through what that could look like. So if it's not something that you would want to do today, if you give us a little time to think through and then come back to you with, what that might, how that could be most effective, I'd appreciate that.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, President Stokes, we can add it to our meeting agenda.
That sounds fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I do think an important point is that there's a lot of expertise on our faculty about what makes sense. And we need to find the most effective ways to share that with the state government to help them design the most effective program they can. They've made a huge investment in the Opportunity Scholarship and the Lottery Scholarship. They want a good outcome. They want students to graduate. We have a lot of expertise on how to make that happen. We need to just find a good way to deliver that.
I'm going to make sure we stay on task for our next agenda item because it's my report. No, so thank you, Provost Holloway, President Stokes, for being here. And faculty senators are having a conversation at the starting at 4 o'clock. So if there are any additional issues or concerns that come up, I'll be sure to share them with you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. So Rick, am I correct that Dr. Sedonis isn't able to be with us?
Correct. I haven't received any notification from his office.
Okay.
So I assume he's unavailable. So I assume he's unavailable.
Okay. Is it okay if I move on to the next agenda item?
Yes.
Okay. So our next agenda item is Faculty Senate President's Report, my report, and really I just wanted to share with you a couple of things. You'll see that we do have committee appointments on our consent agenda, but while I have completed most committee assignments, there's always, sometimes faculty have accepted really great opportunities elsewhere, or for some reason they aren't able to fulfill those obligations. So I'll be sending out an email to faculty senators to help me fill some of those appointments. There are a few disciplines, specifically a few colleges that we did not receive any responses from, a couple of them, and their positions on committees. It's required that somebody from their discipline fulfill those. So I'll be reaching out to those colleges or programs directly. I also wanted to mention that I have been contacted by Terry in the president's office about the service award. The Sarah, I know I'm going to flip the name. Sarah Brown. Sarah Bell Brown. Now I'm overcorrecting. The Sarah Bell Brown Service Award, and we're looking for 3 faculty to serve as reviewers on that committee. So if you are available and interested, let me put Terry's email in the chat. And if you could please reach out to Terry, tjohnson15@unm.edu. And let Terry know that you're available to serve on that committee. Terry would like to know by, let's see, check my calendar. Friday the 29th. Terry would like to have names by Friday the 29th. So if you're interested, please be sure to reach out to Terry. Okay. Our next agenda item, this is an action item, our consent agenda with committee appointments. do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
Ozzy,
Yep.
we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Laura. And any discussion? And Rick, I assume we have a poll? Okay. Consent agenda is approved. Thank you all. Okay. So next agenda item is public comments. I did move public comment. Usually it's towards the end, but I wanted to move it before faculty discussion of Faculty Senate priorities, in case there were those who wanted to make a public comment, but not stay on for an hour for our last agenda item. Rick, do we have any public comments?
No.
Okay. This brings us to our next agenda item, setting the academic year 23-24 Faculty Senate priorities. This is a discussion. And I just want to mention a few things of why I have put this on the agenda. I probably mentioned this in our last meeting, but one, oftentimes things come to the operations committee and that ends up setting the operations agenda, which then also ends up setting the agenda for the Faculty Senate. But I also wanted to give senators and their constituents opportunities to help set the Faculty Senate agenda, which is why I asked all of you, asked senators to go back to their department's programs and sort of maybe informally survey your faculty colleagues about issues and concerns that they're facing in their departments or programs. I also would like to make give more space for conversation, discussion within these Faculty Senate meetings, rather than them being so unilateral. If you're not a faculty senator, of course, you are very welcome to stay on. This is a public access meeting. I will just let you know how things are going to proceed, and then you can decide. I hope all the senators will stay on, and anyone else who wants to participate are welcome to stay on as well. So I'm going to be randomly putting people into breakout groups, and I will provide you with the link to results for the first of 5 questions from the survey that I sent out to the faculty senators. And I will put in the chat what I would like you to discuss in those breakout rooms. So in addition to providing your names, your role on Faculty Senate, or your role at UNM and how long you've been at UNM, I'll also be asking you to access the link that I provide you with the list of responses to the survey. We're going to first focus on the first question, which asks the question about issues and concerns identified in your programs and departments. I'll ask you to look for common themes, decide whether you think it is something that Faculty Senate can address, and if so, how. If you're not sure, that's okay also. You don't have to be absolutely sure. If it's not something that you think Faculty Senate can address, who might we direct the issue to? And then based on your conversation about those issues and concerns raised in response to question number 1, I'll ask your group to prioritize the issues or concerns that you identify. So let me put this here. You'll want to identify a recorder for your group, probably a faculty senator, or it doesn't have to be, but also you're going to identify, give your name, role at UNM, whether or not you're a faculty senator is probably identified in your name already, and how long you've been at UNM. And then I'm going to ask you to discuss the following. I believe you will still be able to see this when you are in your breakout rooms. So it says, in your breakout room, identify issues, concerns identified by Faculty Senate senators, determine if it is something that the Faculty Senate can address, and if so, how. Suggest who it could be directed to, if not under the Faculty Senate's purview. What should the Faculty Senate prioritize among the identified concerns? Let me ask, does anybody have any questions? I'll be putting a link to the response to the first question. You'll be able to access it via Google Docs. You should not have to sign in. Are there any questions before we proceed? Okay, so I'm gonna, I'll check in with you in about 10 or 15 minutes and see how everyone's doing, or if we'll need more time. Going to, again, randomly put you into about groups of 4. Rick, Nancy, you can just ignore the invitation if you want to stay in the main room, or also you're welcome to join us. So let me establish our breakout room.
Me, but either way.
Yeah, it's up to you. I mean, everybody will get an invitation, so it's up to you whether you. I also would ask, you know, if you're in your breakout rooms, if you're able, if you could turn your cameras on so that your group members will be able to see you. Okay, here we go. All to your rooms. I got so excited. I sent you all to your rooms without the link. So I went to each of your rooms to provide it. So I hope that worked out okay. I hope you also value the opportunity to talk with your colleagues, maybe people you've never met before. got to know each other a little bit, but also had good conversations. What I'd like to say, one, Rick's recording this meeting. So I just want to make sure that anything that you report out, first, you don't have to identify your group. And those of you who are reporting out, I just want to remind anyone viewing this, you're not necessarily reporting out on your own thoughts or ideas, but that of what was discussed in your group or in the response to the survey. So these are still, aggregated responses. I'll also say, before you all log off, or I can send it out to the Faculty Senate listserv, I will provide you with the full responses for all 5 questions. I gave you the full responses for question 1, but I'll also give you the other responses so you can read those as well. So in the time we have left, I'd be interested in hearing from various groups. What were issues, concerns that you thought Faculty Senate should prioritize? And of course, also feel free to report on anything that maybe wasn't in the survey responses, but that your group discussed as a priority or something important to consider. And if I'll open it up to whoever would like to report out, and please use the hand emoji under reactions, raise your hand. Amaris.
Hi, everybody. Amaris Ketchum from the Honors College. Granted, I am fairly new to the Faculty Senate. This is my first year, my second meeting. And a lot of our group was fairly new. So we first organized everything according to some overarching themes. And we thought maybe the questions within faculty and staff compensation and benefits, infrastructure and resources, and wellness and work environment were some that we could look at. I'll just drop a little link to this Google Doc our group made in case anybody wants to check it out. But yeah, that's what we thought.
Thank you, Amaris. Compensation, infrastructure, and well-being. Thank you. Laura.
Our group was, it was interesting because it was me in the College of Education and Human Sciences, somebody in the hospital, and somebody in the library. And we kind of had similar concerns or saw similar concerns kind of jump out. And what we were talking about the most is the chronic understaffing across the entire university, and how that chronic understaffing can lead to slowdowns from everything from hiring to students graduating to getting people paid. And we also talked a little bit as a related issue about the trouble that we have recruiting faculty and staff. And then the last thing that we talked about is, why are we so slow in hiring faculty? Like, why is UNM so slow with getting jobs posted and then inviting? I mean, I thought it was just my college, but I have been disabused of that notion. Clear, it's apparently a wider issue across the university. So those were our issues.
Great, thank you, Laura. That's helpful. Also, Justin.
Hey, everybody. So our group, again, a wide variety, including branch campus, health sciences, arts and sciences. We had a number of things. Each of us came with some concerns, some of it overlapping. Looking at health sciences, one thing we weren't sure if this would work for Faculty Senate, but why not throw it all into the bucket and see what works for us. Looking at the electronic medical system, which is outdated, in need of improvement and upgrade. There's been talk about upgrading, but it's a financial investment and something that would be really advantageous and important to folks over there. So maybe we could help with that. Another thing was
Just-
yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
just by electronic medical system, does that mean like the medical system that keeps track of patient data and that kind of thing? Or,
I believe so.
okay,
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, folks.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, it's the patient
Okay.
medical record.
thank you.
A couple other things that were discussed includes the issue of scholarships, the idea of knocking the 15 down to 12. There's some good energy behind this. We talked briefly about the idea of the 4-4 fight for faculty at branch campuses and how this is in a way a 4-4 fight for students for the scholarship. So
Love
there's a
that.
nice a little connective thread there, rhetorically. We also talked about seeking clarity, and this has come up once already, about when we can make hires, how does this work? There's the mysterious attrition of faculty, the loss of full-timers, into how they miraculously turn into adjuncts every time we blink. So how do we look this squarely in the eye and address it? And then the other things were things that were already posted that I already sent to you, Chris, about annual and sick leave and aligning adjunct wages across the branch campuses. So we have a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Carolyn.
Hi. Yeah, so our group was main campus and HSC faculty, and the items that we kind of felt that could be prioritized through the faculty senate, or some of them are the same as what others, like Justin and Laura were talking about the staffing issues. We had that one as well. We also feel, especially at HSC, we need to keep pushing on the compensation issue for not just faculty, but staff and students as well, to just try to get these compensation in line with peer institutions for all three types of categories of people at UNM. And something that hasn't come up yet that we feel is a huge problem that is, it's on the OVPR's radar, but just that we absolutely have to fix this system of post-award. When we're trying to be an R1 institution here, and we're not able to process awards in any kind of time frame that makes any sense, and people are starting to try to go through other institutions because this is such a problem. And so that's something that we feel just absolutely needs to get addressed very quickly. And, back to the staff compensation issue, if we need to be paying people more, I feel like maybe that might be part of the package, right? If we can't attract and retain people in those positions, then that maybe should be part of the conversation.
Caroline, can I ask, the delay in posting awards, like, for example, like an NSF grant, something coming from outside or within UNM?
So once it's been awarded, just for example, I have two, an NSF and an EPA, those two grants that I've been waiting for about a year to have it processed and to get an index for either of those two things. So I think a lot of faculty are experiencing that same issue, and I think it might be like further exacerbated by the fact that some of the similar problems are going on at other universities. So like the ones I just mentioned involve other universities, so it's not just straight from NSF to UNM. It involves other entities as well, and I think that's the case with a lot of people who do collaborative work. And it just feels like the system is not working and needs to get fixed as soon as possible if we want to try to be an R1 institution.
Yeah, thank you so much. Melody.
Hi, Chris. I was a part of a group. Mostly it was me, Roberta Levin with the College of Nursing, and then we also had someone who is in the branch campus of Taos. And so one of the issues were, as everyone's echoed, salaries across the board for branch campuses and adjunct faculty. But another issue that we talked about was moderation of emails with the listserv. it came to our attention with the College of Nursing that emails that we send out on a listserv are moderated, and there's concerns around freedom for faculty and concerns around freedom for speech. And it was an issue that was recently brought up at the HSC Council, and they agreed that this should come to Faculty Senate. And so I don't know how to kind of move forward with that topic, but the concerns around moderation. The second concern that was brought up, or the third concern that was brought up, was that there's a proposed change in the handbook that went out today around defining a clinician educator versus a practitioner educator. And the language was removed about healthcare professionals as a whole being defined as clinician educators, and kind of making it more exclusive to the language being MDs, PhDs, or equivalent degrees, which wouldn't encompass, say, nurse practitioners, pharmacists, many other faculty members that are clearly clinicians. So we're concerned about that language in the handbook.
Do you know, Melody, by chance what the policy number is?
I can look it up really quickly.
I can get that to you, Chris.
Oh, thanks, Nancy. Yeah, and Melody, did you have more? I was just going to jump in and respond to your listserv comment.
No, I did not.
Okay. Yeah, I just so you all know, I've been attending the HSC council meetings. So I was present for that conversation about moderating listservs, and it sounds like it's a real issue with academic freedom and freedom of speech issues, and information being limited to one side of a discussion. So I reached out to IT at UNM after I had scoured UNM's website everywhere. We don't have any listserv guidelines. What I was directed to was like respectful campus policy, that kind of thing. But you know, I think it could be worth it to have something specific about how, you know, appropriate use of listserv, right? Especially in the age of online bullying, etc. So thank you for that, Melody. We'll keep looking into that. John Burke.
Yeah, in our group, compensation came up first and foremost, mostly for attracting talent, retaining talent. Another thing that came up in our group was sort of workloads across areas and titles and equity with that, in terms of what's acceptable in one group may not be acceptable in another area. And last but not least was providing clear feedback to administration about performance of leaders and how that becomes more, I'm trying to be more transparent to all involved.
Yeah, okay.
If that makes sense.
Good job. Good job, John. I could tell you were going to say maybe that you're trying to be diplomatic. Yes. Okay. John, could you provide an example of what you mean by workloads versus titles? This reminds me of something that the College of Ed and Human Sciences is currently facing, or Health Sciences, sorry.
It may be
Human Sciences, sorry.
it because of the areas that we were represented, you know, there's different titles and different tiers, and some are seen as equivalent and some are not, but they might be doing the same work. And so it's one of those where it's within an organization, there might be an inequitable title base, which might need some investigation to balance it. Anybody else from my group, feel free to clarify if need be.
Laura Hannaford, do you want to share what the College of Ed and Human Sciences are currently doing right now. You don't have to go into detail if you don't want to, but just that workload title issue reminded me of what you all are working on.
And I don't know if it's the same, but I'll say just really quickly is that we're in the middle of negotiations around who is a program coordinator, what does a program coordinator do, who is compensated for the work, who is not compensated for the work. And I think it's at least it sounds like a similar thing to me as well. Some programs and departments might call them something slightly different, but the work is essentially the same, but they just go off the title and don't compensate them or give them the same, like a course release or anything, right? So I think it is something that needs to be looked into across the whole university and there's now maneuvers to make people directors just to take them out of union eligibility.
Thank you, Laura. I think that's John Burke. Does that sound related or maybe even an additional issue?
That sounds more even an addition to what we were thinking about. I think they're related, but they're kind of separate in the way we were discussing it.
Okay, so additional workload title issues. Okay. Olivia.
Our group talked about some of the things that have been mentioned already, but we also talked about perhaps transparency as a goal for Senate faculty to help the university be clear on what comprehensive and consistent report for faculty, both like pay, but also retention efforts so that those feel consistent across groups, and also to help monitor for bullying, which was something that came up.
Thank you. Yeah, I know that has been an issue in my own department, and admin was really resistant to do anything about it. So that's frustrating. Okay, any other groups that didn't get a chance to report? Would you like to add anything to what's been discussed? Barbara.
Hi, so our group was also comprised of branch and health sciences and Albuquerque campus people. It seemed to be, and this has been said before, is that the topic seemed to be kind of grouped into some sort of like faculty wellness, which includes disparities in branch and HSC, pay leave, clinicians leaving, things like that. And then the other part was infrastructure. We really weren't sure that Faculty Senate would have any sort of power to do anything about, Johnson Gym or scheduling rooms at the sub. Those are valid concerns, and we get that, but I guess we just kind of needed an explanation about kind of what Faculty Senate could do about what sort of power do we have. I mean, we can make resolutions and make recommendations and stuff, but I'm not sure in some of these areas if that's really the place of this body to say, hey, we need to have whatever in Johnson Gym, or I don't know, anybody in my group want to chime in?
I would just wanted to respond, Barbara. Let me pull up. So as you all know, we have a number of committees within, under the Faculty Senate. And this page that I'm giving you here. So this is the, you've probably seen this already, Faculty Senate webpage on UNM. And if you scroll down, there's a list of every committee under Faculty Senate. And honestly, in order to understand what Faculty Senate does, and I have to keep returning to this over and over and over again, Barbara. So, so like, for example, with infrastructure and Johnson Gym, I might start by looking at the campus development. Here, I'll share my screen really quick. I might look at, so this is the page, if you scroll down, I might look at I'm, looking at these and seeing, well, which one relates to my issue or what I'm interested in. And it, it'll list who's a member, and there's a charge of the committee. And if you click on this, it will take you to the page in the faculty handbook that talks about the committee's charge. And I don't know the answer without looking at this again, but I know for sure that CDAC was previously defunct, and now Steve Bishop and I are trying to, rise from the ashes and get it going again, because a lot of decisions right now are being made in terms of building and whatnot on campus without any faculty input. And so this is something we were talking about at the HSC Council, like, how do we make it easier for someone to get from North Campus to Main Campus to South Campus, especially those faculty who work and teach on North Campus, but also on Main Campus. So that's one of the things that CDAC does, but I think it'd be interesting to know if it wasn't under their purview, why not? And if it's not under their purview, what committee could address issues? Christina?
I just noticed, I was looking at exactly what you shared, and there are some committees that don't have vacancies, for instance, but also don't have representatives from other campuses aside from the main campus. Are there some committees that just don't have representation intentionally from either the branch or HSC campus? How does that work?
Yeah, great question. Just so you all can see, part of the reason why it takes so long to do the appointments to different committees is like, actually, Christina, you might be one of these people, right? Now? Yeah. So we'll be adding your name to this roster, correct? Yeah. So thank you so much for that. I don't know how originally it was decided that this should be the makeup of this committee, but it's described, each committee is this makeup is described in the faculty handbook. So if we want to change this makeup, or if we feel like there needs to be more North Campus representation or more branch campus representation, or etc., on some of these committees, then we would have to, as I understand, change the faculty handbook, which is not impossible, obviously. And I'll just show you one more example. Like some of these,
the Faculty and Staff Benefits Committee is the one I had looked at just because of the questions about issues with compensation on the HSC campus. I noticed that there are no vacancies, but there are also no designated positions for HSC faculty. So that's the one thing that kind of came to my attention, especially since there were some concerns about that.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, and so how this is usually written, it just says faculty, 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 faculty. So then basically when we get the responses from faculty on that survey, preferences survey, if usually I try to appoint people, A, who have responded to the survey first, and B, who put, various committees at the top if they have ranked different ones. So that's a really great point, and is something that we could look at as Faculty Senate, because if it's not like this one, some of them are pretty general, just, appoint a faculty member. Others are, it has to be a branch campus person, or it has to be a tenured person, or there has to be an associate and an assistant and a lecturer, those kinds of things. And so this usually stays stable, like consistent. So it's not really just describing Mohammed, it's just whoever is listed in this list. These are the types, if that makes sense. I'll just show one more example. I was going to show this one because this one you see here, tenured faculty. So that's not in response to who was posted, but that tells me who I have to appoint to that spot. Nancy, I know you're probably going to undo everything I just said.
Oh, no, you're doing great, because I just wanted to say that each committee charge is different. So you have to look at the charges. So Chris is doing a great job, and that's who designates that. And if the charges need to change, then you would start again with that committee would probably want to do the change. And then we have the process by which, that they need to get approved. And if it's a below the line change, it's slightly different process, and an above the line change, then it needs to go before the full faculty senate. But most of the below the lines are more procedural. The membership of the committees are usually the policy level, which would need to be changed. But I know there has been some interest last year in and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, by having the committees examine their charges to see if they're appropriate. And some committees have started doing that, some have not. But if there's issues like that, I would just say we should direct you to the chair first, and then or to Chris, and Chris could direct to the chair.
Yeah. So Christina, I'm happy to work on that with you because I think it's a great point. Nancy, can you explain what you mean by above the line and below the line?
Oh, absolutely. You want to click on one of the charges for me since you're doing the screen?
Yeah, sure.
Let's see if this is one. Yeah, athletic cancel is fine. So you see, okay, so stop for just a second. See this, that kind of orangey reddish box on her. So everything between that box and then now scroll down until you see another kind of box that looks like that. Okay, there. So everything between that section is the policy level statements, and that requires a higher level of approval. When you get to that bottom box, it says revisions to the remaining sections of this document may be amended with approval of the Faculty Senate Policy Committee and the Operations Committee in consultation with the responsible Faculty Senate Committee. So those are the more procedural things. I'm pointing at the screen like you can tell what I'm pointing at, but those are the procedural items. But if you go scroll above that, usually the committee membership is specified in that policy level language. So if you go all the way to the top of the policy, Chris, where the box is on the top of the policy, you'll see that it says revisions to the policy rationale, policy statement, and applicability sections of this document must be approved by the full Faculty Senate. So it's the levels of approval, and we really are trying to strategically, as we do policies, put them into this new format so that the more procedural things that still need some level of review and attention can be dealt with, and then the more policy higher level things will be dealt with at a higher approval level. And sometimes that's the Faculty Senate, sometimes it's academic freedom and tenure, sometimes it's the regent, sometimes it's the president, depending on the policy. So I hope that helped.
Thank you, Nancy. That's very helpful. And I think, Christina, also what your question points to is, I don't know about any of you, but I never had any kind of introduction when I started on Faculty Senate. So, I think if we had some kind of orientation, definitely with food, because we're all volunteers, right? Well, once, unless you're chairing a committee or unless you're in one of the president positions, you're volunteering. So I think orientation could be helpful, just a little, explaining that what Nancy just explained, or even just explaining that roster page and how to read it. John Burke, I believe you had your hand up.
It was discussed already.
Okay, sorry, sir. Laura.
This is just based on what you just said, Chris, and I've been talking to another faculty member in my college about having a faculty responsibilities or faculty governance kind of workshop, because I think it's not something that I got in grad school, right? And I think that the times have changed significantly enough that we need to remind people, or we need to provide some sort of a tutorial about what shared governance means in the current climate and what faculty roles and responsibilities are.
That's really helpful, especially in relation to all of the topics that you all have identified with your colleagues, right? Okay, I know we're short on time, so I just want to say I will send out to the faculty senator listserv the results of the survey. Thank you to those of you who filled that out. I have left that survey open. So if you didn't have a chance previously and you want to respond, I'll leave it open until let's say tomorrow morning. I'm trying to think. I'll send you the current results I have, and then I'll send you updated results in case anybody wants to add their own departments, programs, responses. And I would love to hear from you all. Please feel free to email me at celder@unm.edu. Thank you, Justin. I'd like to make this more of a conversation. So if you all have ideas about how to do that, and I would like to make sure that with each faculty senate meeting, I reserve time for all of us to come together in order to work on an issue or discuss an issue, that kind of thing, rather than just talking at you for 2 hours, because that's miserable. But thank you all for your time. I have to let you go. It's 5 p.m. Go enjoy the weather, and hopefully when I see you next, it'll be sweater weather.